Influence Church exists to help you know God, find freedom, discover purpose, and influence your world.
So, we are in week number 5. Actually, before I go into the message, can you just look to your neighbor and say, hey, I'm glad you are here? Awesome. Now, look to your second option and say the same. I'm glad you are here. Good, good, good. I love interaction. Now, if your second option was your spouse, you are in trouble. But don't worry, at Influence Church, we offer marriage counseling. Just kidding, just kidding. So, we are in week number 5 in the book of Daniel. And we chose this book because it applies to our culture today. A book that was written roughly around 530 years before Christ applies so perfectly in our time, the 21st century after Christ. Because Daniel is a book of history, but also a book of prophecy. Because in book of Daniel, we see this history that actually keep repeating itself through generation after generation. So the story in the book of Daniel takes place in Babylon, and after years and years and years of rejecting God, the nation of Israel was allowed to be taken in captivity by King Nebuchadnezzar into Babylon, where the king tried to make Daniel and his friends compromise on their beliefs, tried to make them conform with the Babylon's culture. So they gave them different names, they tried to make them eat different food, to learn new language, to read different type of literature, and so on and on and on, with the purpose of making them conform with the culture of Babylon. The case that I want to make today is that Babylon is not just a place, it's a mindset. Babylon is not just a geographical location, it is a lie that the devil has been telling since the Garden of Eden. In Genesis chapter 3, the first thing that the devil ever said is, did God really said? Which actually the devil knew exactly what God said. But the devil is trying to bring confusion and always questioning what God said. The devil wants everyone to believe, and this is a Babylon mentality, to believe this lie. So the devil always says, I'm all about you, and you should be too. I'm all about you, and you should be too. You girl need to do you. You guys need to do you, and it's all about you. Also, the devil says, God is all about himself. This is a lie, and if you buy into it, if you fall for it, if you will fall for Babylon culture and idea for this lie, if you fall for the Babylon mentality, are some consequences that comes with it. And I will show it to you in the book of Daniel in just a few minutes. Babylon mentality is not just in Garden of Eden and Daniel's time. We see it also just a few chapters later in Genesis chapter 11. And people in that culture said, then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens so that we may make a name for ourselves. Can you see the narcissism in this? Can you see the desire to just being about themselves? It's just for ourselves. Forget about God. Forget about what he wants. Actually, God named that place Babel. In Genesis chapter 11, verse 9, he's saying, that is why it was called Babel. Because there, the Lord confused the language of the whole world. Babylon That's where the names come from. And literally, the word Babel means sowing in confusion. Don't forget that, because I'm going to come back to it. Please understand that every time you fall for the Babylon lie, when it's just about you, that the devil actually is for you, that God is about himself, when you buy into that lie, the result is confusion. If there is one thing that will classify our world today, one word, if I will have to name one word, to choose one word that defines our world today, is confusion. Think about it. It's more money spent on mental health than ever before, on coping, on medicating, on numbing. Why? Because people feel more pain, anxiety, depression, intimidation than ever before. Because they bought into a lie. And by the way, all of this is going to be judged by God. When you get into the Great Tribulation, which is in the book of Revelation at the end of the Bible, you see that in fact the Antichrist is joined with this, what the Bible calls woman, which actually it's a metaphor, and is saying in Revelation chapter 17, verse 5, the name written on her forehead was a mystery. Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abomination of the earth. In fact, God goes so far to say that out of all of the sins, this is the greatest, the sin of pride, and be all about me. I will do me, and I will reject God. So I show you in the beginning, in Genesis, how this mentality was brought into by the devil, and at the end of the Bible. But also, I want to show it to you right in the middle of the Bible. Because if we look at Isaiah chapter 47, and actually if you read the paper Bible, Isaiah 47, the chapter starts with a title called The Fall of Babylon. And Isaiah 47 verse 8 is saying, now then, listen, you lover of pleasure, lounging in your security and saying to yourself, I am, and there is none besides me. I am, and there is none besides me. 47:10 is saying, you have trusted in your wickedness, and have said, no one sees you, when actually God sees everything. Your wisdom and knowledge misled you when you say to yourself, I am, and there is none besides me. Now, we have to be wise and realize the danger. When the Babylon mentality sneaks in, we have to know how to recognize it. Because the Babylon mentality elevates self and lowers God. Let me say it again. The Babylon mentality elevates self and lowers God. This battle takes place right now into this world, and by the way, the devil is very involved in it. Even in Christianity, people love Christianity if God will forgive me, love me, and let me do what I want. But that is not Christianity. In fact, the devil and Babylon mentality will try to convince you that God is mean and restrictive. That if you really go after God, you won't like your life. You will get to heaven, but you will be bored to death on the way there. That is a lie from hell. That is a lie from the devil. Which, by the way, is a true follower of Christ knows that this is a lie. Because you know what? Following God is full of life. If you follow God, you get less of what you want, but get in abundance what you need. And I would like us to remember that. If you follow God, you get less of what you want, but you get in abundance what you need. And to be honest with you, what we want is not always good for us. I can give you endless stories about my life when I thought, oh, I want this, or I want that, to just find out that actually I didn't really want it. because it was not good for me. And actually, I choose to have in my life what I need and lean on God to provide that for me. So Babylon mentality is pride, and the world even celebrates that. But in fact, the Bible calls it a sin. And if we pay attention to the book of Daniel, the Babylon, the pride mentality doesn't turn out too well. And actually, that is a story of Daniel in the story in the book of Daniel, chapter 4. But let's go to Daniel chapter 4. And I took all of that just to bring you to chapter 4 of Daniel. Don't worry, we will be home before dinner. I promise that. But Daniel chapter 4 is saying, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at home in my palace, contented and prosperous. I had a dream that made me afraid. And by the way, it's a whole message right here in this verse. Because see, when we follow God and follow biblical principles, we are blessed. But the problem is, when we feel blessed and we are blessed, without realizing, we forget to give Him recognition, give Him honor, and then we turn to pride. And because we turn to pride, the blessings go away from our life. And then we turn to God again, it's like, oh God, I need you here, I need you now. So then we try to follow His principle, and He's blessing us. And once what He blesses us, we forget, and then we start turning to pride. And it's just a vicious circle going on and on and on and on. Do you want to stay blessed? Then try to break the circle. Do not turn to pride. Give Him recognition for everything that you have. Daniel chapter 4 verse 5 is saying, I was laying in bed, Nebuchadnezzar said, the images and visions that passed through my mind terrified me. So what he actually sees is a huge tree, a big tree with a huge branches that was protecting everyone and everything, was providing shade, was providing protection, and then this tree was cut off. But the roots, the stump, was allowed to stay there. So Nebuchadnezzar called his enchanters and magicians to interpret the dream, because he thought this big tree are all his enemies that are going to be destroyed and cut down. But none of his enchanters and magicians knew how to interpret the dream. So, of course, Nebuchadnezzar called in Daniel, because Daniel actually translated or interpreted another dream for Nebuchadnezzar earlier. So, Daniel comes and says this, well, King, your majesty, I hate to tell you this, but in Daniel chapter 4, verse 22, your majesty, you are the tree. And by the way, probably had to take a lot of courage for Daniel to say that to the king, because the king has the power to kill him right there on sight if he doesn't like what Daniel says. So Daniel 4:25, you will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox and be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 years, 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdom on earth. And this is a cool part. This is that show us God's grace. The next verse, 26, is saying this. The command to leave the stump of the tree with its roots means that your kingdom will be restored to you when you acknowledge that heaven rules. That stump is a mercy of God. You may feel cut down, but God gives us a chance to come back again, to grow right back up if we make the right decision. So, if I could send a message to the world today, is this. If you follow the devil, your life will be cut down, will never end up in a good place. But God is always merciful, forgiving, loving, and give us a chance to come back. But will happen only if we acknowledge that actually He rules. So the Bible goes on and said this. All this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar 12 months later. As the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, he said, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as a royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Can you see the narcissism? Can you see just the pride? Can you see everything that is just about him and himself and nothing else? And by the way, actually, Nebuchadnezzar built something great. If you go and study, he built what is called the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world. He created irrigation system for trees way before the irrigation system existed. So he was pretty smart, and he created something nice. And you can study those. But he tried to take ownership of that. Instead of giving praise and thanks to God for giving him wisdom for being able to build that, he said like he was the one that created everything, and for his own pleasure and for his own majesties and purpose. Daniel chapter 4:31. Even as the words were on his lips, a voice came from heaven. "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox. 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and give them to anyone he wishes." Immediately, what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from people and ate grass like ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle, and his nails like the claws of a bird. Now, some scholars say that this is a metaphor of pure insanity. Others say that actually this literally happened. And he actually ate grass and lived in the fields and so on and on. Either way, the brother is not in a good place, to be honest with you, right? I don't like to preach this stuff to people in their faces because you know what? Life will do this to us. If we don't follow God, these distractions and this stuff happening, life will make it, will help us see it. There is nothing that the devil has to offer that will end up in a good place. We see that in the culture today. They call it dysphoria, a sadness of the soul, a confusion. I'm not saying that the mental health, the dysphoria, I'm not saying that this sadness are not real. Actually, I validate them. Actually, they are real. The problem is people are looking for the solution in the wrong places. So the title for my message today is How Sanity is Restored. Daniel 4:33. At the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, so the end of that time of 7 years or 7 seasons, raised my eyes towards heaven and my sanity was restored. Then I praise the Most High. I honor and glorify Him who lives forever. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as He pleases. with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" At the same time, my sanity was restored. My honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne and became even greater than before. God didn't say that he didn't have a kingdom. God didn't say that Nebuchadnezzar didn't rule a kingdom. God wanted for his kingdom to have a glory. God wants for our family, for our workplace, for our marketplace, for everywhere we go and who we are, to be a great kingdom. But we have to understand, we have to give honor where is due, where honor is due, and that is God. Today I want to give you 3 things, and by the way, are not mine, are in the Bible. I want just to point them to you. King Nebuchadnezzar did 3 things, and his sanity was restored. And I'm speaking to all of you that might be confused, not knowing what to believe anymore, what to do anymore, or who to listen anymore. Because you know what? In some of your minds, the whole world is messed up. Or maybe the world around you, that surround you, is messed up. We have to do what King Nebuchadnezzar did. Daniel 4:37. Now, I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, number 1, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven. Second, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And the third, and those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. Number 1, when we exalt the King of heaven, our sanity is restored. And the most important word in this sentence actually is the king. We do not understand this word because we did not experience kingdom. We live in a democracy, and in a democracy, my opinion matters. I get to vote. I am self-governed. I am all for it when it's coming to ruling countries. But let's be honest. When we talk about faith, we do not live in a democracy. We live in a kingdom in our faith. And in a kingdom, the king rules. I don't get to vote. It's only his opinions that matter. When we understand that, we will submit ourselves to it. And by the way, when we submit ourselves to the king, he doesn't make us slaves. Actually, the king is bringing us in the royal family. Submission to the King of heaven makes you royalty. Many people think, and if you are like me, I have hard time submitting. Sometimes to my wife. And some of you know what I'm talking about, right? Submission is not coming natural. Because we all want to lead. We don't want to just do whatever we want. But something that we have to understand, in a kingdom, the king rules. And we will understand that, he will bless our lives. For this reason, King David says in Psalm 145, I will exalt you, God, my God, the King. I will praise your name forever and ever. See, kingdoms don't have opinions. Kingdoms have absolutes. And I found Christians that like God's attributes, but not God's absolutes. And by the way, we don't have an options to choose what we want to pick. We have to submit to the king. See, for this reason, I do not listen to my body. Many times I feel I want to do something or I feel I want something, but I have to be intentional and not giving in to the feelings. I do not allow how I feel to govern my life. If I will govern my life by how I feel, I won't be here today. Probably I will be in jail. Because my feelings many times take me in the wrong directions. Especially when I counsel people. I sit down with people counseling and I hear all kind of stories like, hey, I need your help. I did this. I'm like, you did what? I'm like, I'm gonna, really. But I don't give in the feelings because will not end up well. I will end up in jail. Also, I will not become more like God if I give in to my feelings. So I have to take all those feelings and submit to the King. And then really understand where people comes from and how I can help them to see it's a better way out there. I take all my feelings and submit them to the King of Heaven. Being on the stage, teaching the word, counseling people, leading and managing some of the businesses that I lead is not what I do, actually. It's who I am. Because I get all my feelings and submit it to my King. I submit my feelings, I submit my thoughts, I submit my body to the King of Heaven. I recognize it's an honor for me to lead Influence Church with amazing people, with my lovely wife, but I will be honest with you. If my King will ask me tomorrow to go do something else, I love you guys, but I will do it. Because I submit to my King. And no matter, if he's gonna ask me like, hey, I need you to go to Africa, I will drop everything and go to Africa. Well, maybe it will take me a couple days to just get everything in order. But I will follow that. Because it's not about what I want, it's about submitting to who I honor as my King. When Kelly and I applied the principle of tithing and giving to the Lord since we were teenagers, I don't have an attitude like, hey, God, look at me, I'm giving you 10%. Look at this, see what I'm doing? Actually, our attitude towards giving 10% back to God is more like, Lord, I am returning 10% to you, and I'm so thankful for allowing me to keep the other 90%. That's the attitude that we have, because I want me, my family, our marriage to honor the King through everything that we do. If you want your sanity back, commit to this King, because he's going to take you to much healthier places. He's going to take you to a much better place. Second, this is how sanity is restored. When we acknowledge that God does everything right and all his ways are just. You have to trust in the King and understand that he sees a much bigger picture. Then you and I can see. See, we have a limited angle to watch what God is doing in our life or in this world. But see, God is in heaven, and he's not just seeing a bigger picture, he's seeing also over the years and decades and centuries. So we have to trust in him and just understand that everything that he does, everything is right, and all his ways are just. And by the way, you know what? Many times I disagree with God's point of view. And you know what? Many times God disagrees with my opinions too. And to be honest with you, I am glad he did in the past. Makes me realize that I am no God. Timothy Keller said this. If your God never disagrees with you, you might just be worshiping an idealized version of yourself. See, for this reason, he is God. Because he sees a bigger picture, and also he can do whatever he wants to do. But this I know, whatever he wants to do, is going to be a blessing for us. You might not see it as a blessing in a short term. You might not see it as a blessing going through a trial, going through a test. You are not going to see a blessing going to whatever problems or trials you might have in your life. But at the end of the trials, at the end of the test, you can look back and say like, wow, God protected me. Oh, God bless me. If you stay faithful to his calling. And the third, we get our sanity back when we walk in humility. When it's not just about me. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those platforms and social media and everything else is trying to push a narrative that it's all about you and what you are doing, and it's all about this and that and all this stuff and posting out there. If you follow some people on those social media, you know exactly what they are doing every 15 minutes. It's all about themselves. And some of them, they call themselves even influencers. We have to give honor where honor is due, and that is to the King. I have so many people asking me, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And sometimes my answer is, why do you think my opinion matters? Especially when it's in a big context like the world or economy or anything like that. Many times I direct people, let's see what God thinks about that. One reason I love the prayer time is that I recognize I need God. Pride says I don't need God. Prayer says I need God. Because in prayers, I depend on him. In prayers, I bring everything to him. In prayer, I recognize that he is the King. You guys have no idea actually how many times I feel insecure. How much I have to rely on God. And by the way, he never disappointed me. And many times I'm struggling, sometimes in the middle of the night or sometimes during the day, should I do this, should I do that? And feel of insecurity. But every time I feel insecure, I go to the Bible, I go to worshiping him, I go to praising him, and some of those insecurities, some of those fears, some of those concerns are just dissipating because I enter King's presence. And you know what? In his presence, all worries and all struggles and all problems are going away. Sometimes I'm going through just one step at a time, one day at a time. Sometimes I have a whole year vision, and sometimes I have a 10-year vision. But this I know, in book of Isaiah, chapter 66, verse 2, the Lord says, these are the ones I look on with favor. Those who are humble and contrite in spirit, and who tremble at my word, who listen to my word, who obey my word, who loves my word. Those are the one actually God looks upon with favor. And I do not consider myself a prophet, but please listen to me. You either gonna have humility or humiliation. Humility or humiliation. One of those, it's started by us. The humility. We choose it. The other, the life will make us experience it. Pastor Chris Hodges, one of our mentors, was taught at the beginning of his calling in ministry a few lessons from his mentor, and few lessons that we love to live by, and actually I think are few lessons that we all could apply them in our life. And I want to just give you a couple of those. The devil will always try to question your calling. Go back to the roots, go back to the truth, and reaffirm your calling. The devil will always try to steal your future, will always try to influence what God has called you to do. And if you don't pay attention, he's going to succeed. But you always have to go to God, go in King's presence, and ask him, what is my calling? What do you want me to do in my life? The second he mentioned was, if the church doesn't have enough money, there is waste somewhere. Fix the waste, and the offerings will go back up. And that is true in our daily life. If we have struggle in our finances, it's probably because somewhere, somehow, it's waste. And if we can start applying God's principles in our lives and not waste, I have no doubts that his blessings, financial blessing, is going to start pouring upon us. We have to just trust and do everything we can to be good steward of what he entrusted us with. And he's going to reward and bless that. Another one was, don't ask people for anything. Ask God, because God will talk to people. And my wife can confirm this, because many times she will try to make me do something, and I'm kind of a stubborn guy. I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. Slow and steady wins the race. And she can say, like, many times she will try, like, honey, don't do this. Honey, can you do this? Honey, can you do this? And after days of not doing it, she started praying about it. And out of the blue, a week or 2 weeks later, I have this desire of doing exactly what she asked me to. And sometimes I go to her like, honey, I think I'm going to start doing this. And she will be like, I told you that 2 weeks ago. Oh, you did? I forgot about that. But see, I'm kind of, if it's my idea, it's going to be done. If it's somebody's idea, not too much. But think about it. If you want your kids to become better, don't just, knock them down. Do this, do this, do this, do this. Guide them, help them, but then go to God and pray about that. And probably the last but not the least, Pastor Chris Hodges was taught, don't have too many plans, because the steps of the righteous man are ordered by the Lord. I'm not saying don't have a vision. I'm not saying don't have a plan at all. But just don't make too many plans. It's a story in the New Testament with a rich man that he was so proud of what he accomplishes that he said, like, hey, my barns are full. I'm going to go build another barn. I'm going to fill that one up, and I'm going to do all of this. And then somebody came and said, like, hey, tonight you are going to meet your Creator. And all his plans went off the window. It's good to have plans, but we have to trust in the King to bless the plans. And our plans has to line up with his plans. For this reason, it's so important to seek God in our lives and try to align our plans with his life, with his plan, with his plans. If I can have everyone please stand up. We need to recognize his kingdom. We have to recognize him as a king if we want to be not just successful, but to be prosperous in our life. And when I'm saying prosperous, I'm not talking about winning the lottery. I'm not talking about having a lot of money and big houses and big cars. Because to be honest with you, for me being prosperous, having a family, having kids that love God, that follow God, that have integrity, that are led by principle, that is, for my opinion, in my opinion, much better prosperous life than just wealth, finances, and money. I'm not saying those are bad, because those are good and can help us accomplish more for God's kingdom if we are blessed financially. But bottom line is this: everything that we have, who we are, it's because of the King. If you never enter this relation with the King, I want to give you today's opportunity to just surrender to this King that is not going to make you a slave, is going to bring you and make you royalty. If everyone please close your eyes. If you never gave your life to Christ, here in the auditorium or watching and listening to this message online, I would like to, everybody please keep your eyes closed. Just raise your hand and let the King know that you are ready to follow Him, that you are ready to honor Him. And I would like you to say this prayer after me. Heavenly Father, I believe you sent your Son, Jesus Christ, to die for me, that I, a sinner, will be able to enter your kingdom. I make you today my King, my Savior. I honor you with my life. Be with me now and forever. If you said that prayer, I would like you to just let us know. Go on our website if you did it online and let us know, because we will love to send you a book. It's called What's Next, that is going to help you in your walk with God.